until you actually need it sometimes. And but thank you on behalf of Carla and I. Thank you. You've all been very welcoming. It's actually been a lot of fun to kind of come hang out. Need it sometimes. Is that me? Um, the we've had a really good time kind of getting to know you a little bit, kind of checking out what you have to offer, and we've had a really good time, and so we're pretty happy. Hopefully, this. There we go. So we're gonna go through the um, we're gonna just go through back through the vision, the core strategies, kind of some of the tweaks we made based on the feedback that we received. Kind of just get your kind of your eyes on that. As kind of Sarah mentioned, there'll be opportunities kind of to edit and review between now and next week. And then I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about implementation steps and next steps for you all as a DDA board. And so there we go. Quick, um, that's just us again. I like getting high tea in London with my family, which is kind of a strange experience. But anyway, so you basically, I just want to kind of recap kind of what we heard from you and some different themes. I mean, support of local businesses, I think came through. We really heard that. Be different and distinct. I think one of the things, you're in a valley with some other downtowns and communities, and you want to work together, but you also want to be distinct and you want to be you and create kind of that local flavor. And I think you have a real good opportunity to do that, really distinguish yourself. Seek opportunities for investment and development. I think there's some things going on now. There's some opportunities to take advantage moving forward. I think is good. The need to promote sustainability. Obviously you live in a beautiful environment. You've got the river, you got the mountains, you got trails. You have a lot of great, wonderful things going for you, and you kind of want to be a part of that in a productive way. So I think that came through. And the other thing was a strong desire to kind of improve, to work on some of your infrastructure needs, the sidewalks, snow removal was a big one, stormwater, roads, and so that one I think we heard that a lot too, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of the implementation, some ideas to consider moving forward. Um, was there anything else? I mean, if there do you think I missed anything big on this, or just kind of hit the high points? And feel free to. I mean, we're uh, kind of open for any questions or discussion. So Sarah went over this. Um, in her introduction, but I think we're going to provide you after this meeting. I think Carl and I are going to sit down and we're going to go through the Word document that we're going to provide to you, and then I just think we're going to have to think through ways of kind of editing or receiving comment efficiently, because I know you're on a really tight time frame. Um, and then, we'll be working on formatting everything next week, making everything look really nice. It's not to say I don't want to kind of say once you get the formatted PDF, you can't change it. You can. I mean, obviously there's opportunities for tweaks, and people, I'm sure you have someone, we will provide you with the InDesign files so you can work on them and continue to make tweaks as you go through up until you get to the point, when you have to do the formal approval and stuff. And there are opportunities as well for minor, you're not going to run afoul of the law. I think if you make, you're allowed to make technical changes and things like that. So, but again, you're working on a pretty tight time frame. So we just want to make sure we get your stuff get your stuff to you quickly, and we meet our schedule so you can meet yours. We already talked about this, but legal is going to take a look at it. There's a few issues, I think, just to make sure we're checking those boxes, because it is required by state statute. So We want to make sure that that is taken care of. Um, so with that, with all that, the that stuff out of the way, I want to just throw back at you the vision. What we tried to do is kind of highlight some of the areas that we changed based on the feedback that we got from you as much as possible, so you could kind of see how there's the little differences. Um, we so the vision, we added the unique character, funky spirit, and it celebrates individuality. I think we took out, was it new? There was a new development. Um, and that reference to kind of make it a little more generic and open, um, in the where community and commerce thrive. I think we had some discussion on that, and then we added in from a sustainability, social, and we added the environmental and fiscal sustainability into that vision. So go ahead and take a second to kind of digest that, take a look at it, and if you want to, we're open for comments. We're not doing a formal roll call vote, so I'm not going to ask for his, but um, I mean, I'm looking to you to for direction.
Kind of nitpicky, but should it say and local businesses are supported?
Yeah, we can so in local business is ours.
And Mike, did you compare notes with Sarah Wick and the branding work that she's done on behalf of the town from a marketing point of view?
Yeah, we did in terms of kind of the brand, the downtown brand and the strat. Are you talking about that work?
Well, yeah, that opening paragraph, opening sentence, and so forth. She just did some work last year to refresh the town's collaterals, brand, etc. And I think it should just be consistent.
Yeah, we have that, and I think when we send it to our person, that we're going to make sure that the color scheme and everything is consistent with what you've done already. So
Yeah, but also the language, and the debate around how much we emphasize funky and evolve towards family stuff and so forth.
we could take another look at that. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. We can really take a look at it and see.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we edit it here. I just want to make sure it's consistent.
Yeah, it's got the brand. They do have the
Cool.
brand guidelines.
Good. That's all I was trying to find out. Thanks.
Cool. We'll move on from that uh, to the core strategy. So I wanted to throw this out there for discussion. We had kind of taken a crack at kind of branding or naming those buckets and on the left, and we had received some feedback and maybe some ideas of kind of the naming, not the kind of core ideas behind them haven't changed. I mean, they're not changing, or I should say, we've adjusted them based on your feedback, but generally they kind of line up the same. They're just kind of the title is different. So um I'll let you kind of take a look at them again. We are obviously, we put the ones out on the left to give you something to react to. Um, we're not we don't have I have no pride of authorship. This is a document that you're going to have to live with. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with how things are phrased and how things are presented. So um, I wanted to kind of share that and just get your thoughts uh, um, on either or.
I definitely like the right side. That was a little bit better. I feel like in 30 years that language will still be acceptable, where I don't know if the language on the left-hand side will
Could you just
be
clarify which is the right side? The
the
where's? Sorry.
the blue.
All right.
The be eclectic or where the mountain?
Where the mountains.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's great.
Anyway,
I don't remember everything from Monday. But where in the core strategies, and maybe we'll get to that, is the support of local businesses?
well, it's within the goals and strategies and then within the description. The descriptions, I think we adjusted, but it's just the kind of how they're titled is what we're talking about. So any other?
Like maybe it just makes sense to go through the buckets if that's what's coming
Okay.
next and then.
I mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
I was gonna say the only, I don't know about the word pulse for some reason. That's the only one that I'm like, I like it, but can we like get it a little bit better?
Yeah, that
That's the only one.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that one we were kind of playing around with a little bit.
Okay.
So I think we probably need to wordsmith that one a little
'Cause
bit more.
What we're saying with that one is like, this is the spot. Like meet me at the spot. Like
Yeah,
this
the center of the center of town, it's really a way to bring in the entire community into like, get, be let the all the residents be the ambassadors for downtown kind of. So, but why don't we, yeah, I think if we go through and then we can go through each of them and then
Lives instead of prides or pulses.
what was that?
Lives instead of pulses.
Yeah.
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 Right.
Ours, yeah.
So the under this one, the unlock the vibrancy, this was the, so I'm gonna have to go back and reference the where the mountain spirit and creativity are intertwined. The unlock the vibrancy by fostering the arts, locally owned business, and preserving the unique mountain charm that defines the community. So this was I think, and in terms of the description, I think there didn't seem like there's too many kind of changes to this one. But then let me get into the goals and strategies. We made a few tweaks and wordsmith these a little bit. Promote and support a sustainable local economy where all business can thrive. Create investment programs that support local character, local art, and locally owned businesses. Create a distinct downtown brand and marketing to promote the downtown as a regional destination, and encourage public art and street level activation that make the downtown unique. So yeah, go for it.
The emphasis on local, prohibit, like, I'm just thinking of like restaurants. I don't know a ton of local restaurants that want to go undertake, starting a restaurant in Asia, and there's some non-creative groups that probably would this prohibit any.
No, I appreciate, I think part of, I think I think within, or at least the way I interpret, the idea around is to try to not necessarily recruit, because I think when we get into the affordable live phrase, it's more a reflection on the bigger development side where you would bring in. But what I think we're trying to get at is a little more here is trying to kind of make sure that you could grow your existing business base. You're providing opportunities for what you have, because I always say in economic development, it's a lot easier and more efficient to kind of build from what you have than to try to recruit in new. But I think that the fact that you're growing, you're in a that you're you will need to have some room for the new as well. So
I like it.
Yeah, what I'd say is these words give some direction, but it doesn't mean exclusively.
yeah.
I think we all know that to grow the restaurant retail base, you're gonna have some front range groups, like Stoney's at the resort did a great job.
Yeah.
But I like how number one,
Yeah, for sure.
I like how number one says all businesses though. So I feel like it does, like, because the local economy, it doesn't matter who owns it, there's still gonna be 5 people that live here that work there to support that economy. And all businesses, I feel like that just opens it up to anything.
Yeah, and I do think too, I would encourage you, when you're thinking about not on the commerce side, employment base is a big foundation of a good, healthy downtown. Um, you want people to live downtown, but you want people to work, and you want to have employers to the extent it's a little different because your economy is so tourism dependent. Um, but I think as you continue to grow and add population, I think you and other opportunities emerge with, like, um, uh, you can have, hopefully you'll have opportunities where you can bring in employers into your downtown, because I always say the employers are your Monday through Friday crowd, and your residents are your evening and weekend crowd. And then you supplement that, layer that with tourism. And I think that's what drives a lot of your local economy. So I would just kind of, as you move forward, to kind of think about how, where those opportunities might arise too, because that's a big critical component of a healthy, sustainable downtown.
Can we take note of that? I think it's a really good point, because that came up in our discussion yesterday about like if the developer like lives in town or like the business is locally owned, they're like activating, right? Anyways, I like that.
Yeah. Cool. Why don't we jump to the next one? So and we changed this on the initial one from embrace the river to embrace the outdoors, and then sorry, I might bounce.
Where the river flows through nature's heart.
Where river flows through nature's heart. So we changed enhance the access to the river and preserve and sustain environmental resources. And I think one of the things that we kind of heard from you was, like, the river and the river walk and that kind of project or that idea or concept that you're kicking around is important, but because you live in a wonderful natural environment, I think thinking about sustainability more broadly was really important in terms of how you address new construction, how you preserve existing buildings, how you operate streetscapes and green space, and all the other pieces of it. I don't know, Sarah, do you want to talk about that a little? Because I know that was something that was a little near, or the sustainability question, or I will put you on the spot, but
Yeah. No, I think just we talked a bit about, that perhaps rightly or wrongly, sustainability hasn't always been at the forefront of economic development in a DDA in downtown. But given just climate change and the need for adaptability and resilience and everything else, as well as that we are a destination in the mountains, where people are coming because of our natural resources and their desire to enjoy the outdoors, and outdoor recreation is a large part of our economy, that it really be important that that sustainability piece and the preservation of our local resources and open space and enhancing those resources be important, as well as just the overall sustainability picture of looking at how we're building and what we're creating, and the kind of destination management idea that a lot of towns have been trying to move towards, versus just bringing as many tourists as we can and as many tourist dollars as we can, being thoughtful about what that tourism looks like and what those impacts are, and making sure that we're not overrunning the reason that people are coming and want to live here and visit here.
and I think it's also a great marketing tool too. I mean, I think people really gravitate to it these days, and there's a big segment of the population, particularly like in a state like Colorado, where we're so with the mountains, and it's such an important part of the culture and who we are in the state, that I think um, it's a way to. I mean, I would think it would be part of a marketing and branding and how you kind of present yourself to the world as a destination, because people. I think there's, like I said, I think people want to see that, and I will. Sorry, I don't want to get off track too much, but I will say, keep in mind when you go forward with different projects, and they're going to fit multiple buckets. They should fit multiple buckets. It's not like if you do one thing, it'll just fit here and that's it. They don't exist in a vacuum. You're going to have overlap. And I think that's a good thing when you're kind of checking multiple boxes with these different ideas. And I think, because I think sustainability plays within your new development. And I think it's important within your marketing, and it's important within how you kind of address the natural environment that, within the boundaries of the DDA. So. Questions? Let me move on to the the goals and strategies. We discussed kind of making sure the land use codes allow for creativity and unique development that promote that sustainability, promote development that highlight the natural beauty and reduces the impact to the environment. There are a lot of different ways you could do that, and I will say there's a lot of money out there to do that too. So keep in mind, there's within each of these, we tried to figure out where some opportunity would lie as well. Create cool public spaces, create a vision and concept plan. I think one of the things and I'll talk about this later in the implementation piece, because that Riverwalk district that has kind of come to the forefront. I think it's important, if that's a value and an opportunity that you're looking to pursue, that you have the vision ready, that you understand what you want from it, so that when the development comes and when those opportunity comes, you're not having that discussion and you're in front of a developer. You're prepared to move forward and say, this is what we want, this is our expectation. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more kind of on the implementation side. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little quick taste of that. And we did change on number 5, the access points. We changed that around a little bit to include both, access points for the river, but also kind of engaging with some of the bike paths and other things like that to help when people are, come into downtown on different means that's kind of planned out and thoughtful. So are there any?
I don't know if we want to, but just a thought on number 5 is just adding trails, because we have the Fraser to Granby Trail, and then we also have Gavello Trail kind of leaving. I don't know if that kind of connects us to the outside too.
Yeah, that I think that's an easy change. I think that makes sense.
And
Well,
then, sorry?
Sorry, I was gonna say with number 5 too. I'm guessing the idea of the access points in part. I know we talked about access points to the river, and that you're probably thinking that access to the trails outside of downtown, but you've got the including access at the end if it was just creating recreational opportunities. And I'm making this up on the spot, but something like, a climbing wall at the end of downtown, or just kind of, again, focusing on that outdoor recreational piece that I think people really come to Fraser for, and how we better incorporate that within downtown, both in that Cousins Ranch open space that's part of this, as well as the Riverwalk district and other areas around downtown.
Yeah, because Hideaway Park has the value of that climbing wall, and then instead of going all the way to the softball fields, like they'd stick around in this region.
Yeah, and that's just an example, but yeah, I would just do creating recreational opportunities, including access, and that kind of broadens it a little bit.
Cool. Any other thoughts on this one?
And sorry, Tiffany, I cut you off. If you want to continue.
No, that's good. I love number 3, but I don't like the wording. But I'm just picky.
I might agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that we can wordsmith that.
What is it about, just to help us, what is it you don't?
It's
the
just,
word
it's
cool.
too slang.
interactive.
People Stick around.
Attractive.
You say enjoy downtown instead of stick around. They're enjoying it.
Yeah, interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Educational.
fine. I appreciate it. I just, because
Yeah.
I want to make sure we hit
Yeah,
so I don't want
but
to.
I love the subject.
Yeah.
I like the
It's
word
needed.
stick around, actually.
Mm.
Because you want people to
I don't
walk
mind
and
that.
visit lots of different places,
Yeah.
see the arts and all that stuff.
But
Yeah.
I think we could, create
Spend
interactive
time.
public spaces that encourage people to spend
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Just the words chosen, like the concept is perfect.
I like that.
Inviting,
Inviting
yeah.
public spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a
Old, I
good.
like the word cool.
I think it just doesn't go with the other. The other
Yeah.
four sound more like professional, and then
Yeah.
that one's like the bringing it down to the people. Yeah.
No, just laugh at the. I've never been cool in my life.
Try being an action.
Attractive.
I think I like
I-
inviting.
Yeah, the suggestion for
that one.
inviting.
Yeah.
And
So I mean, what you're saying is like, I think what they did on, it wasn't Colfax, downtown Denver, they did a lot of those really cool benches that had unique colors, and it's like, just gets people to sit down, and shade always does that too. So yeah, I think cool is I mean, things do just look cool and makes you pull over.
yeah,
So I don't know. I kind of like the word cool a little bit more than I did a second ago.
Inviting and.
Support from your-
Yeah. Or, I mean, I don't know if we're overusing unique, but like unique and inviting public spaces, if that kind of gets to.
Cause it's
Well-
like appealing and like eye catching.
yeah,
Cool means like, oh my gosh, look at that. That's cool.
yeah. I know. I kind of.
Do you use the word appealing?
I do. I'm
That's
nerd.
appealing. Is a man.
Well, why don't I think we've got a couple suggestions on that. Why don't, in the interest of time, we'll move on and we'll wordsmith that a little bit. And try to give you something something a little different. So live fun, live affordable, and what was the, I'm sorry,
Where mountain dreams are within our means.
with Mountain Dream. So we've added the diversify local housing options, and keeping affordable and accessible to maintain the diverse and eclectic community. So I think, this is, I think, the one area where I've viewed where the kind of bucket where it's a little more focused on the newer development and about what your expectations are for the new investments that are going to come in, and kind of, making sure that you have some diversity of housing and you've got, uh, uh, you know, uh, things that are affordable and accessible and so on. So I think that's kind of the intent with this one.
I think this is probably one of the most difficult things, but also one of the most critical to our long-term future.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree with that. I do think your point, I think, if I'm interpreting it correctly, is you're in an area in a corridor that's kind of facing growth. And I think the question, from a DDA is, how are you going to grow? And how are you going to be a part of that and help kind of positively impact that? So I think, that trying to kind of set you up to have those discussions and kind of come up with a cohesive, and so you can kind of help make sure that growth benefits you, and or not the DDA but the community and as well. So let me jump over to the so we added the attract partner with private developers and local owners to promote investment and reinvestment development. I think I had mentioned this, I think, in one of the meetings. I think, shop local's great, develop local's better. You want developers who are local, who are going to keep their money and have a vested interest in the community. I think that's important. It's not to say that every development is going to be somebody local, but I think it's just kind of an idea that, like, answering yourself kind of, who do we want to work with, is important. So also looking at opportunities to kind of look at underutilized properties and strategic acquisitions. I do say this is my bias, and I'll fully be transparent about kind of, but I do think doing acquisitions is a key strategy that you shouldn't avoid. I have a saying, I teach a workshop called How to Think Like a Developer to the Main Street programs and DDA programs. And one of the things I always say is if you control the real estate, you control your future. And if there are underutilized properties or properties that are eyesores or that have environmental conditions and challenges, don't be afraid to kind of step in and because then you can be directive and you've got leverage in terms of how it gets developed and in that, often can be used as that your own investment. Land is equity. And like I said, I've always said many times the last couple of days, you're becoming equity investors as a DDA. So just something to think about. And then I think we talk a little bit, we kind of duplicate a little bit about zoning. I know for the most part, have done a pretty good job with, the land use code and zoning, but it's just a way to kind of make sure that you're always kind of course correcting and reviewing is needed with that. Uh, so I'm going to ask kind of our developer colleague over to my right. What's been your experience with the zoning code and do you think, I mean, is from a development perspective, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, we work with an looking for buy right stuff, so it's achievable to do what we want to do. I think it pushes you to do for sale townhomes because that's just the most profitable thing. So I think to get other stuff, there needs to be better incentives to do other stuff but like for an outsider coming in, it's going to be a pretty easy choice on what they want to build, I think, based off the code. But if you're more invested in long-term viability and home things that are dependent on the growth of the town too, I think you'd be swayed to do some other stuff as well. But yeah, I think there needs to be incentive for some of the other stuff people want.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry to put you on the spot. But
Real quick, Greg, I'm curious because I guess in my head, I thought the townhomes was like what the market made most profitable versus the code.
Well, yeah, so I think those kind of go hand in hand, like the code in downtown, I'll just use the Riverwalk code, for example. There's a desire from everyone to have not only retail, and the code's 20 feet of retail, but fun, exciting retail, riverfront restaurants. And to get those things, I don't think someone's just gonna come in and build a one-story restaurant,
Yeah.
like to create those cool experiential retail environments, they take more than 20 feet, they take more space, they take prime, frontage on your property. And those are the things I think that need to be incentivized. I think the code allows for what it allows. I don't think you could require someone to do that, but yeah, I think maybe the market
Yeah.
makes a townhome development less profitable.
Right.
I have a narrow view. Like there's maybe other people with
Yeah.
better ideas, but
I feel like you're saying like the more codes, the more that like the townhome development is wanted for the developer to make a little bit more money based on requirements.
I guess maybe that was a valid point, but maybe it's not the code pushing it there, but I think like you look at the return of doing a for sale townhome development versus the return of doing a retail development and offering it at a price that's going to get someone in there, it's night and day.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the thing that sticks out to me the most is like, I want to have a riverfront restaurant too, but it would be probably option at fun a list of 10 options in terms of financial viability for a project in that area.
So I think about Grand Rapids. I mean, I wrote that down, like in Grand Lake. Great example of something that people would be attracted to.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, can we make note to understand what the town codes are? Because I think that's going to be vital and understanding the change of it.
and
I didn't know there was a different code. There obviously would be next to a river.
Yeah, I mean, there's a code and then there was an incentive plan. That's no longer there. And then there's, in my mind, two big incentives in that Riverwalk area are if you do 40% ground floor commercial, you can build up to 40 units per acre. And the density is what helps you justify that commercial. And then if you do 20% of your units are deed restricted under 120% of area median income in perpetuity, you can build up to 40 units per acre. So those are the two incentives in the code, but the incentive outside the code no longer exists, which I think is more needed for the retail development.
So DDA would make incentives outside the code
I think the town
or the town?
has to make the incentive, and we can have our own DDA specific incentive only in the DDA boundaries. But that would be something that we can control with our funding in our geographic area, and the town can
It-
offer with it.
And I
Thanks for
I
saying
will
that.
point out to understand it's a 30-year plan with a 20-year to 10-year extension. So the markets are going to change, things are going to change, the climate's going to change, everything. So I think part of the reason for including that in there is that you kind of, it's a prompt to revisit that. You do have the authority as a DDA to do overlay or actual request overlay districts or different zoning that you feel meets kind of your needs. So I don't want to get hung up on kind of what you have today, but really I wanted to put that in there so that you can kind of understand that it's something you want to keep your finger on the pulse of as things change, because I think, zoning typically what on our planning side is, usually every 5 years you want to take a pretty comprehensive review and make sure you're meeting the needs, and that you're not kind of you're consistent with what's happening in the market and stuff. So, and that over a 30-year period, I mean, you're looking at six different updates or reviews. So keep that in mind, and I don't want but I think it's a great discussion, and I really do appreciate the insight and what you provided. The one thing before we move on to the next I wanted to add, the other thing to keep in mind when you're going through on this, there are also a lot of grant funding that's available right now, that you've got access to. You're independent, as a public body, either through the DDA itself or through the town or both. You've got housing money, you've got property acquisition funding, the town has opted into Prop 123, so that opens up buckets of funding from the state to do acquisition. CDPHE has money available to do environmental cleanup and environmental assessments and different things like that. We've done that a number of times. There's also, I'm not as familiar, but like with parks and trails and recreation, there's pots of money that are out there to kind of support different planning efforts and different investments. So, so when you're thinking, I want to offer that so you can kind of think broadly about the investments that you want to make, and that you're not just limited by the whatever TIF you get every year.
Business support.
Yeah,
grants,
yeah. So,
tourism.
tourism, yeah. So there's a lot of different things you can kind of tap into. So let's.
I just have one more comment, and it was kind of covered in another goal, but in number 4, just adding environmental sustainability to the encouragement. But it was added in, I think, a previous.
Yeah,
Goal.
we could add that in. I think that's it.
I like
makes
that.
sense. We'll move on. So, we did actually kind of capture, we were happened to be driving by when the train was letting off people. So, they've had some unwitting passengers who now become imagery. Um,
This one is where Fraser's Pride pulses or Fraser's Pride lives. Have I heard? Lives because it plays like.
Thing,
Yeah.
you know, that's a good, good point.
yeah, if you think of anything and you want to just jot it down or write it down, or come talk to us after for this list. But again, this is thinking of yourself, the downtown, as the heart of the community, and a source of community pride. I think, I think part of it, what you really want to see is, when you have people that live here and families come to visit and they say, let's go to downtown Fraser. and not let's go to Winter Park or let's go to Granby. And I think that's when you kind of know you really made it, is when you know you bring people in and the community becomes your ambassadors. And I think so that's I think the overarching goal. You know, and you know, and so I think that's what the kind of what we're trying to kind of capture with this. Um, and then just going through the goals, there weren't a lot of changes. Um, but we did kind of tweak a little bit you know, obviously be the center of the community, promote events, programs, encourage, improve signage, wayfinding, let people know they've arrived. Um, the local tourism strategy and take advantage of the Amtrak station, build gathering spaces and promote activity in community. I think the, you know, I think, you know, you do have the Amtrak station. I was trying to kind of get, you all probably know a little bit better about the kind of rhythms of that and what people stop. I mean, I've heard at different times that people stop and they have to, or because the train is not always timely. So, but I think kind of thinking about kind of what that means and how you could build off of that is the gentleman that from the planning commission is not here today, but I think he made a really excellent point on Monday about, you know, I think is over the years, I'm guessing we're going to have a lot more multimodal options, and the train may become, you know, more important, and having that stop is, you know, being able to protect that and grow that here, I think is something you might want to think about. Uh, and kind of build from, and so and the other thing I would point out with this one is kind of with events and community programming. I think events are important, but I will, from personal experience, not all events are equal. They are very time consuming and challenging. So think about what it is you want to do and support. And if there are better organizations that can do it, you can like either contract or just sponsor somebody else, you know, think about that. But also keep in mind, you know, the purpose of events is to bring people down to liberate cash from their pockets, meaning, and some events maybe don't do that as well as others. And so kind of keeping that in mind when you're thinking about kind of what you want to do with those kind of events. So any thoughts on this one before we move on? Barry, you're looking at me if you want to make a comment, but
Keep a thought on events, and I think I'm thinking of your point because we transferred one event from the town to a group of local merchants, and I think it's working out.
yeah,
I'm just always thinking about it.
I just wanted to make a point on multi-day events, encourage lodging stays and more cash flow.
yeah, I think that's,
I think that's a really good point. Maybe you can talk to the fact of that.
I had a few ideas.
Some of those.
That was one thing,
That's a great idea.
I think it came up at a board meeting or planning commission meeting a few months ago about like the average visitor day spend in Fraser was like 1.3 or
Yeah.
0.3. Yeah, and like other mountain towns, it's, you know, above 2 pushing 3, which is a big difference. Just because you're forced to eat out, you're forced to stay overnight. It's those numbers. So keeping that in mind, and you know,
That's when
a
I,
desire for the town, I think is
If
important.
I put together, you said what you said, it's possible that with not very large DDA expenditures, we could really make some exciting things happen.
yeah. And I think the word weddings, I'm just gonna leave that there. Just gonna leave the term weddings on the table. Because that encourages
a lot of spending.
3-night,
Yeah.
week-long stays.
And we've intentionally included spaces in the center for exactly that reason.
Yeah, I wanna meet with you. On all the pros and cons.
Yeah,
I will say, and again, I'll try to be transparent when this is kind of more of my opinion than being around here and it would not surprise me if you see over the next 5 years another hotel. coming in at some point. I think you're probably due because you have the Holiday Inn is the one, and and I think STR, the short-term rentals market is starting to adjust, I think, and I wouldn't, if you get another hotel at some point on this side, I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing murmurs of that, but
I was gonna,
The books on there.
Yeah.
There are discussions for.
I was gonna ask
couple
that,
for
does
renewing.
any of the terminology in this limit lodging growth?
no, I don't
Okay.
think at all. I think if anything, I think it complements kind of what
There
you're.
is a hotel, Winter Park, because my construction guys just bid on it.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind. We want to keep pace at least.
Yeah.
I mean, Gravity House has done a great job, I think. They look cool.
But in terms of new lodging, it's not
Yeah.
really
Barely any rooms.
I don't think,
Yeah, I guess they don't, huh?
I'm not cool enough to stay at Gravity House. I've been to-
Mike, I know you had like branding under one of the other buckets. But I guess my head kind of goes to branding when I think about like Fraser
Yeah,
Polls, Fraser Pride, and then also just kind of like placemaking and streetscapes, if that would fit within this bucket or
well,
you
we
know,
we
kind of
hit
came
the
up in the first
streetscapes in
one.
the multimodal bucket
Okay.
a little harder, and but I do think a cross-reference I think it would make sense if we could
Okay.
cross-reference that, I think, because um
Yeah, that placemaking's kind of an across the board with like unique amenities and public spaces, but
Yeah,
I kind of
sure.
see that here too.
We don't need recreation in this, because I just keep going to like activity being a broad term, which includes recreation. Because like creating it's out of our district, but like the trailheads, and prove me if I'm wrong, like some of them don't have a spot for like people to hang out in the shade before and after trail rides. I'm not frequent on the trail, so I could be incorrect, but I'm just wondering if that needs to include anything recreation, or did we do that in another bucket already?
We do, but it's not to say that you can't, again, because it's going to cross multiple buckets, but I would just open that up to the board to see if you have any thoughts on that, or do you feel like,
I'm thinking it leaves it like way open.
yeah,
Like I'm thinking
yeah.
signage and wayfinding, like it's not just to let them know, right? They're in downtown. Like if it's attached
Yeah,
to Fraser.
That's to St. Louis and
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the term activity, it
Yeah, I
could mean
think it's-
anything.
Broad enough.
cool, why don't we'll move on.
This one is wherever every journey is connected.
Yes, and I just want to point out, we had somebody volunteered to be a street level model with the 2 dogs this morning.
Nice.
His day rate was pretty good, so the dogs would charge a little extra, but
Yeah,
So-
that building it doesn't match my expectations. I'm just gonna be honest.
the
That viewpoint, I'm just like, great. Is that Fraser? Where are we? Just to make a statement. I don't
And
hate
nothing
it.
against
I
the
just-
model, but I think I agree that photo could up the game.
Yeah, I mean, no critique, not on the just slide in general, but just like
well,
can
I
see the
You
town.
don't like your building.
I'm just saying. I mean, I love the experience for the person on the inside is beautiful. Because I know bay windows are terrible. I mean, that gives the small business owner like optimal sunlight,
Yeah.
which is what we need. I
Well,
just
not the birdie lounge, but.
Well,
True.
I
like I would get nervous at birdies.
if I could though pull it back a little bit, because I think you're we're talking about two different things a little bit, because I think what this bucket really hits on is kind of the customers' engagement with the physical infrastructure. And I think that for building and kind of thinking about kind of the requirements of the exterior facades and the look and the view, that I think is a function of more of your land use code and how you kind of address what your expectations are for materials and facades and things like that. So, and I think because I don't want to cut any that short, but we had a lot of there was a lot of discussion around this. It seems like this is one of those issues that kind of rose up a little bit through our discussions about getting around. There's some challenges getting around town, and there's need for some sidewalk improvements. There's a thought about some connectivity with trails, um, even regional busing, but I don't think that maybe is a little just outside your swim lane. But I think it's important that you participate in that discussion. Um, but I want to kind of talk, and let me jump to the you know the street design changes and traffic calming measures. I think one of the things that I've observed is you kind of get into Fraser and you get out of Fraser before you realize you're in Fraser, I think. And I think that's something to think about. Um, these are longer term discussions because obviously that when you're this that it doesn't happen overnight, but I think to the extent that you kind of put your flag down as to kind of what your priorities are will be important. Um, when the funding comes and you kind of think about that. Streetscape improvements and year-round walkability, the drainage issues, those I heard a lot about, snow removal is an issue, the stormwater drainage. I know your public works folks, they're kind of actively kind of looking at that more deeply and trying to make some corrections to make that a little bit more efficient. The street grid, it's a little, I don't want to be polite, but it's a little wonky. Um, and I think, in part because of the way that the highway kind of had one point curved through town and then they shifted. And so it kind of had some impact on how your street layout is and how you kind of get around. I mean, part of it is thinking about your downtown map is split by US 40. And you want to make sure that the each side is you're not kind of creating two different downtowns, that they're cohesive. And I think that, I know that when you got a state highway running through the middle of it, that presents some challenges. So thinking about that and then will be important. And then optimizing opportunities. I I um I think this one, I actually kind of thought when I came in, I was going to hear about parking. I've been working in downtowns and um, I, I, for parking always seems to dominate a lot of discussions, I think, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised that I think that wasn't, we were able to know that didn't kind of dominate the discussion. But, I do think it's important. Um, I would make just a couple suggestions. I think one is um, having a little bit of a parking problem is not a bad thing. Um, you want a parking problem because I've worked in a lot of downtowns, and the easier it is to park, the less time I'm going to spend in that downtown. You're accustomed if you go to a place that's fun and cool, you're going to have to park and you may have to walk a little bit. But that's part of the experience. It's part of the exploration you get in downtowns that you don't get in new development. You can turn a corner and see a mural or go wander down an alley accidentally and see something new or discover a business or a brewery or something that you hadn't anticipated. So I think thinking about that kind of exploration part of downtowns is really important and not kind of I think surface parking is the least efficient use of land in a community that has really expensive land prices. It's the least efficient use of land. But with that said, I'm going to make one suggestion. Um, that land along the railroad tracks by the Amtrak station, you're never going to develop it. Railroad's not going to let you. I did a project where we leased the ground lease from the railroad, and you could put a surface parking lot. It's the only thing you're gonna be able to do with it, so you might as well take advantage of it if you can. I'd say it's easy. It's not like the railroads are great about returning phone calls. Um, if you start discussions now, eventually they'll get sick of you calling and they'll call you back and they'll see what I, um, but just thinking about creative ways to when you think about optimizing parking, even just ideas of, can you do angled parking sometime, instead of like parallel parking, and can you add spaces that way instead of taking up valuable land that you could be developing or using in other ways. So I would just encourage you when you're thinking about parking, um, try to think a little more creatively in how you could maximize the space. Just as an anecdote, from my time, I when I was working for the city of Loveland, it was, parking. It was like we can't, we'll fail if we don't have we needed a parking garage. We need a park. It was kind of what I heard for 10 years. And, and, um, and and it was it's an expensive proposition. It was, the one I did was $17.5 million. Today's, that's probably more, over 20. But when I looked, I went into our downtown and I worked with our planning and our GIS, and I said, how many public parking spaces do we have kind of in the core of our downtown? And we had more spaces in our downtown that were available to the public than the Super Walmart on 287. And I tell people, you have more spaces, you have more public spaces than the Super Walmart. Do you think you have enough businesses that is, and they're like, no, but it's not here. It's not, so so I think just give that example just for you when you have these discussions to kind of think creatively or think a little differently about kind of how you kind of manage, parking, because I think I know it's important,
Yeah,
but I don't know. So, oh, sorry, please interrupt me.
no, it's all right. If I could just, I want to amplify the sort of point you're making, because I think it's a real opportunity for not just the DDA, but the whole town. Think about all the slides we've just reviewed. We've got embrace the river, outdoors, river walk, bikes, climate change, environmental sustainability comments, being accessible. We've got a free bus system that runs the entire length of the Fraser Valley. We've got a train that is within a 5-minute walk that potentially could be going to Union Station in the not too distant future. We've got our parking challenges that you've just conveyed. I don't think this is a question. I think there's an opportunity here. Let me rephrase that, to not make it a question about how we get as much parking as possible. I think there's a trend across the country, and in particular in Colorado, when you look at what Denver has or Colorado's recently announced with regard to public transport, people want walkable places. People don't want to be surrounded by cars when they're willing to park in an area like you just suggested and make a short walk to a more pleasant area. I frankly think we should double down on the DDA, Clayton Court, and so forth being a pedestrian area where you can park your car or ride your bike, or the bus stops right there. And yes, there's ways for someone who has accessibility problems to be dropped off, but for the most part, it's a low car or no car portion of our town. And I think we would be on the upswing of a trend that people want. One guy's opinion.
Well, thank you for that.
I'd also like to point out that the town's done a really good job the last year in 2 areas: one, putting parking around the mural park, and also painting parking spaces or visibly along 40, so it's obvious you're allowed to park there. So just having a visit there, I can say that parking situation is much less challenging than it was a year ago. And I may have mentioned this the other day, when Arrow rents out all their space, if they ever do, Winter Park's gonna have a parking problem that's really challenging. And that could be to our advantage.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think.
Mike, bringing it back to some of these other points here, the bucket description talks kind of about connectivity and multimodal, but I don't see them as much in the strategies. Yeah. So I just reiterate, street and trail connectivity. I know we've talked a lot about trying to have a street run through other than Highway 40 to connect County Road 8 to Safeway. So making sure there's room in there for that. I know we'd like to improve connectivity to the Fraser River Trail as well on the trail side. And then also just something around creating or enhancing multimodal possibilities. And again, recognizing that we might not know what that looks like in 20 years. I think like the electric scooters have like taken over cities, and that's probably something that never was specifically provisioned in a plan. I'm not saying that's what we want necessarily, but just something general about multimodal.
Yeah, can you actually go back a slide? I was gonna say that because it says specifically in walking and biking options, we could change it to alternative transportation options. In order to like keep it open for things like that.
Just put out those scooters.
The what, no?
The last meeting, I was like requesting them too.
Oh, I'm sure
Yeah.
it'd be, you want scooters crossing.
I mean, maybe
crossing-
it promotes walking and alternative
Alternative
options. Like I would
options.
specifically call out walking because I
Yeah.
think Fraser is not pedestrian friendly, and I would love, love, love to see it become pedestrian friendly.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of gets to what Mike was saying. I was just thinking, I was in downtown Loveland for a conference and had dinner with a friend. I parked a couple blocks from the restaurant, and then I decided to wander around town on my way back to the car and bought an ice cream cone that like I really didn't need. But yet, I walked by a yummy looking ice cream store. And so I think that is, as you think about spreading business around, a good thing to keep in mind as we have more businesses in Fraser, that there's a benefit to having people walk a couple blocks sometimes for
And
those
I
other
don't
businesses.
think the pole yard is that far. I mean, I don't know if that's on the map anymore, but like I know Michael and I were going back and forth, like families don't want to park that far, but I'm like, it's actually not that far to get on the trail. And then because the trail's nice, like you have a trail that may be
And
more
there's a
like,
bridge over a creek.
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
super cute. Like that experience is not necessarily that far. I mean, I could walk it again. with
Well,
the
there's
stroller.
been a lot of conversations about connecting a road again from Safeway. And if you had that road and it was also pedestrian friendly, like that makes that parking near like the Holiday Inn and Safeway much closer. And if you think about shared parking models and conversations where, again, it's not always full, just maximizing parking that we already have around town.
Truth, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that I was gonna bring that. Yeah, because the Safeway, you've got to be in the the hardware store. It's like, that's what it's just kind of maximizing kind of what you have. And is it, is, um, but I mean, another thing too, I mean, I mean, I know scooters kind of probably aren't a great idea.
No, they're not a good idea here, trust me.
But,
I already know that. I know they're not.
We
but,
need not tire,
do
not
we
tire
have-
scooters.
No, you don't want
So-
scooters
but
at all.
e-
Do
e-bike-
we have a bus line that stays in Fraser and doesn't go to Winter Park at all? No,
The Fraser line, I mean, I know at least during.
goes
resort
to Winter
season.
Park.
Yeah.
I mean, they need a Fraser line that only stays here because those buses, you sit around and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And it's terrible.
There's a lot of
Unless you're
space.
just going straight to the resort from Safeway. They're
Yeah.
useless pretty much here.
We did hear that we heard that from a few people. And I think that is a good point. I would, I think that the challenge with that is that it's kind of it's a regional question, and I think from just a cost benefit, your opportunity to influence that is challenging. But I would encourage you to be a part of that discussion and make that known, because I think, I think it's important. You have the old bully pulpit. You have the voice to be able to.
That's what they said years ago, Julie.
Julie said on the chat that they are changing the black line during the winter to every 15 minutes in Fraser. Well, I know they just did a transit study, so I don't know if that's something that came out of that.
black lines following each other in a row to have that happen.
Right.
promise you, that's not happening.
It is better in the winter, though.
It is
Give
better
them
in
that.
the
It is
winter.
better in the
It
winter.
All right, staying on track.
Okay, yeah.
I do. So I think we've got some good feedback here. Before, let's see what my next slide is. Sorry. So before I jump into this, I want to pause just for 1 second. I want to just open it up more generally before we leave the core strategies discussion. Is there anything that you think any big opportunities, big swings that we missed, or themes or things that we should include, you know, that you want, that we, in any of those buckets, or any ideas that you think we want to include. I want to be open to that if you have any thoughts on that. I don't, if we missed anything.
On the surface, it feels so broad and well designed that we can fill in almost any reasonable blank.
Yep.
Can you go back to that first bucket and what was under that first bucket?
The eclectic.
Yeah. I want to make sure there's that just it fits in kind of support for entrepreneurship. And I know we talked a little bit. I don't know if we want to do maker spaces or local incubators or something like that, but that
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I mean,
those sorts of things would fit somewhere. if we did.
co-working, make the makerspace, things like that that kind of encouraged entrepreneurship, I think would be good.
Right, and just kind of small business support, but I think that falls within what you have here. Yeah.
We could wordsmith it a little bit. I'm a huge fan of creator spaces and
Yeah.
maker spaces, so I think they're great for entrepreneurial, but yeah, I think
Well, you know, and frankly, one of the opportunities that I've been exploring with the folks in Jackson, Wyoming, is they have 20 not-for-profits that are located in their art center that helps them pay their rent. Some of them are shared spaces. And if we want to do a maker or something, one of the things we could explore is maybe one of the floors of that potential center is built for that. That puts more people downtown all day during the week, which is good for all the businesses, and it helps us get the center built. So something to file away.
Yeah, I'm just gonna second what Sarah had said about like the space, like creative spaces, whatever term you gotta use. I think co-working doesn't lend to the creatives as well, because co-working is usually the offices.
yeah.
But it's one of the concepts I tried to get going in the place I had in Winter Park. It's difficult, but like I think we need to support it as best we can.
There's
Yeah.
a couple down here that do.
There's a
specifically
really good one in
nonprofit.
Loveland.
I want to say, is it the Alliance Center or something? There's one in Denver that I've been to, and it's like it is pretty neat because it's like co-working, but then also like a lot of nonprofits get housed there,
Awesome.
and it worked out like super well. Like they filled it up very quickly.
Yeah, just the lights.
Is it the Alliance Center? Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty. That's the Alliance Center. Yeah, that's pretty. That's a pretty cool space, and it's nice because there's always people there.
Yeah, they're really, I think in this market, they're really good models because you've got a lot more people that are you know, 1 and 2 employees that don't want a brick and mortar office and may not want to work from home all the time, and have a conference space or have access to
That's
that.
I went there for like board meetings, and it was super nice
Yeah.
because like you didn't need that much office space, but then you also had it when you did have board meetings and other things. You could go
Yeah.
and use that spot.
Yeah, no, I think I think it's definitely something it's worth calling out, I appreciate that. So why don't we jump in? I think, how are we doing on time? Okay, I want to get through the implementation piece. I want to kind of talk a little bit about how I'm framing this within the plan, and then what we're going to provide you as an addition to the plan of development. So first off, we're committed to providing you with a work plan following the approval. I think we're going to take everything and digest it a little bit and start to build out a work plan for you, so you could think about kind of what your agendas are going to look like over the next kind of probably 6 to 18 months, and kind of what you're going to be focused on, and kind of how that relates back to the plan. From the plan perspective, because again, as I said kind of on Monday, we want to keep it at a much higher level. We don't want to get into too many specifics, but one of the things we lay out is kind of how to think about implementing some of the goals and strategies that we laid out. And because I think how you think about them is kind of sometimes as important as what you do. And I think I took the model of kind of doing a business startup, and I think I'm benefit because my colleague Carlin has worked much of her career working for startups, so she has a very good perspective on how that works. But I've always encouraged uh, um, DDAs to think at this stage to think of yourself as a startup company. And I think when you're starting to think like that, it's important to understand some of the key elements. And one is, what is the product or program that you're going to be supporting? I mean, obviously you're not building a widget, you're not building a Apple Watch or whatever. But you've got programs and things that you're providing that are those products to the community. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And I think it's also important to think about who is your customer. When you're in a startup, you want to know exactly who you're selling to and kind of what you're going to get from that. And I think it's a little different, but I think you've got a different customer bases that I think you want to think about or you want to keep in mind when you're moving forward with any planning or investments or projects. And then I think circling that back to, does it support the broad goal of the plan? And I also, I put this in, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the framework of optimization, optimizing your time and your investment. Because the thing I think that you have to really be mindful of is, having a lot of great plans. There's 100 things that, being here that you could do, but thinking kind of what is your capacity to take them on at this stage, and kind of thinking that through a little bit is going to be really important, because you do have finite resources, and so I think I want to have a little bit of a discussion about that. So thinking about kind of what are your products? What is it that you're kind of selling into the community and selling into the downtown when you think about DDA? And you've got different things like small scale building improvement programs, facade improvement, accessibility programs, fire suppression and public safety programs to help small businesses and office kind of optimize the space and kind of occupy them efficiently, affordably, so they can go forward. So you've got things like that to consider. You have large scale development projects. That's part of a DDA as well, I think, and kind of how you interact with those and kind of what your expectations are coming back, I think are going to be really important. Your marketing and branding, I think you have to define what the downtown is. Thinking about how you do that and kind of how you reflect the downtown to the broader community, I think is important. And then community events and gatherings, how you engage with the public, and then other investments that maybe I don't contemplate, or that you have ideas that you're not thinking about. Particularly, I think I'm thinking more. I've included in large scale development, like I have this outlined in a little more detail in the plan, but that includes things like big infrastructure projects too. The ones, as you get a little further along and you get a budget with street improvements and things like that in addition. That's kind of thinking about, okay, we have a good idea of kind of what our products are going to be, and then thinking about your customer base. And so I broke it down into 4 different groups, and I have again, there's a little bit more of a discussion, but you have your DDA constituent members. I think those are really important. You got to keep in mind, the business owners, the property owners, the residents, the folks that live within the boundaries that are most directly affected by the things that you do are really, you want to keep that in mind. Your downtown customers, the people that are going to come and they're going to shop and they're going to visit and patronize the stores and the retail, that's important. I put a separate group, which is a bit of a subgroup of your downtown customers, but tourists. I think, clearly your economy tourism is a huge part of your economy here. I know it's changing, but it's still, you've got a lot of opportunities with cars going up and down the highway, and kind of how you can kind of appeal to that customer base, I think is important. And then the fourth one is the political leadership and funders. I think this one is a little bit easier to overlook. It's a little bit more political, but I would just kind of want to impress upon you. I mean, we do live in a political world. I don't think it's a bad word. I think it's just the reality. You have to be able to work with the chamber, you have to work with the county assessor, with the town board of trustees, with the art council, with all the folks that are going to be kind of that you need to support, you, and that you need to kind of do things that are going to positively benefit the downtown. So I just would encourage you when you're thinking, um, keep that in mind. It's a big part of what you are as a DDA. And I think, to the extent that you can really embody that or provide that leadership, I think you'll help you really get do a lot more than I think you otherwise would be able to. And then the operational efficiency, I think I'm going to get into this a little bit more detailed, but um, understanding your capacity and understanding the need to have good processes in place. This is for entrepreneurs. This is always a hard thing, but I'm going to tell you, process is king in the public sector. When you're an entrepreneur and you work for yourself and you're your own boss, you can do what you want, you can go forward. But in the public sector, when you're in the DDA, process protects you. And what I mean by process is thinking about how you think and make your investments, making sure that they're transparent. Decisions are transparent. That who you work with, it's not things are you minimize subjectivity, and that when people come in, they know the beginning, the middle, and the end, and you can be very clear. So when you make a decision, it insulates you from criticism of, you just like him better than her, or you don't like us, or you do this. And it's like, no, we have a process in place. We've reviewed it based on the criteria, and we're making an informed decision. So think about that, because I think the reason, and I think it's important, if you're successful, and I think you have everything is in place to be successful as a DDA, within 3, 4, 5 years, you may have a budget that's 6 figures plus. That's a lot of money to invest. And I think with that comes a lot more scrutiny. So I think I just want to make sure that put that in your to think about those processes, so you're not kind of opening up yourself to unnecessary criticism. And I'll talk about that kind of more in the work plan context, I think. But if there's any questions about this, please stop me. So with that, and this is a little bit of a taste of kind of what it will be providing in the work plan. But I think one of the things that I think I'm going to recommend that you take on first is I think you need to have an investment policy and a process. I think the reason why I say that is because I've had conversations with most all of you and a lot of other people in the community. And I think there's a really desire to have to I'm not going to call it incentives, because I think in the DDA context, you're making investments in your downtown and how you frame that. And so I think there's a desire to support local businesses, to support development, to make critical investments in infrastructure that help with mobility and sustainability and all of those things. But everyone kind of broadly agrees with that. But when you start to get into the details, some of those nuances start to appear, and you start to see those differences. And I think at this stage, when you're not kind of inundated with a lot of projects and things that are coming, I think it's important to kind of put your stake in the ground, and have that discussion about, okay, what are the things that we want to invest in? What are the things, and what do we want from a developer to make those decisions? What's the information that we're going to need to make informed decisions? And how are we going to, and not only that, but how are we going to kind of, how are we going to process that information as a board and make and kind of make that decision? Because I think that's the one question. I think if you're, again, I've been in this position where, you're asking for millions of dollars to do big projects and big swings. And the question is, well, why did you do that? And when you didn't, you could have done this instead, or you just like them. And to be able to say, no, we have a policy, we follow the policy, here are the different benchmarks that we made, and so we can go forward. Because I think to the extent that you do that, you'll build a lot of trust. And I think that's important going forward. And that's just, I'm giving you that from my personal professional experience. I think the other thing, the second thing, that creating a DDA, a vision for your local infrastructure, I would also include thinking about the Riverwalk district that you're thinking of is having a conceptual understanding or a vision because, um, what's going to happen at some point is a developer is going to come to you and they say, I just bought this big parcel of parcels and I want to invest. But I want you to come help me. I want you to rebate the tax increment, or I want you to help build this infrastructure, the Riverwalk or part of it. And I think it's going to be really important for you to say, okay, this is what we want. We've discussed it. We know what we want. You need to build this and we will invest into our vision and to support your project. But you have to, obviously you have to negotiate as equal partner. And I think that applies to CDOT when the town is looking at changes to road networks and things like that, when the bus service, all of those things, I think, to the extent that you've had those discussions ahead of time to inform that decision, I think will help drive your actions and you won't be left scrambling, like, what do we need to do? Well, wait, we have to wait 3 months because we have to figure all this stuff out first. You have those discussions early on. Um, and I think with the infrastructure, that's going to be a longer term. That's a lot in there, and I recognize that. But I want to at least get you thinking about some of those aspects of that so that you can be prepared when you want to be when opportunity will come. I've done this for 25 years, and you will be surprised as you're successful, you will get opportunities that you or I or no one could have anticipated that'll pop up 12 months from now. And you'll say, where did that come from? But to the extent that you're kind of ready, I think you'll be able to kind of take advantage of that and move forward quickly. So thinking about those things is important. And then I think the Fraser brand and that marketing strategy, I think you've got the brand logo that you've done. I think you've got some language around it. The town has done a good job on that. But thinking about how are you going to start to define downtown Fraser? When I come here a year from now, or somebody somebody says, what does downtown Fraser mean? It could be, well, that's that funky town with cool art or something, or with a cool restaurant and a good distillery that I need to stop by before I leave. Sorry. So I think thinking about that and I think will be is going to be something you'll want to think about and early on, an early stage. So I think with that, I think that's it. But I want to pause. I went through that pretty quickly. We've got about 25 minutes. It's not to say we have to use all 25 minutes, but I want to pause and kind of let you digest that a little bit. And if there's questions or comments, I'm happy to kind of answer them.
So this pushes into a work plan that
Yeah.
includes like direction on where we focus.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. Super cool. Because I'm still thinking of that inventory sheet of like the land owned by the town, land that could be included in redevelopment under activated regions, and wondering if there's like a way to just start that process in a spreadsheet sense where we have it like listed as like, top of the list of areas we want to develop and kind of the lower list of areas, and although that list would change, it would kind of keep that high vision of
Yeah,
things
exactly.
we want to manifest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the discussion I think that you're going to want to have. Because I always share the example. I will never work in big retail for a reason because it's the most cutthroat, horrible industry. But if you look at big retail, the giants, the King Supers and the big box Walmarts and stuff, they have 40 locations that they're working with, right? And they may build one per year or two. That's how they operate. And I think, and I'm not saying, go be like them, but I think from a development perspective, I think it's important to kind of think about what, like, it's a process that you can kind of adopt or think about, like, to your point, I mean, it's like you should have think about what are the 5, 7, 8, 10 areas that you think are important that you could, because one of them might, one of them may never become available, but the one on fifth on this, somebody may die and say the estate comes and says, hey, we want to unload this property, and then you can jump in and say, oh, we're ready, we can move forward quickly. So I think that's exactly the kind of discussion that I'm envisioning, and I think I'm going to put a little bit more detail into the work plan for you to think about. The other thing, and I think I've said this to you individually, and I'll kind of say it to you kind of at a public meeting, the purpose of a DDA is to promote private investment. I mean, at its core, that is what DDA exists. It's to promote private investment in your downtown, be it local, be it outside, whatever, be it a customer coming and buying stuff. You want to promote private investment. When you're asked to provide that investment, when a developer comes to you or a business comes to you, and that's why I say it's not an incentive. You're an investor. You're an equity investor in a project. And think of yourself like that. And think, because you earn the right to have a return, and you earn the right to peek behind the curtain and see the numbers within reason. I'm not saying, you don't want to go look at somebody's bank account, whatever. But I think, when the numbers get bigger, you can do that, but I will go down that rabbit hole. But you're right to look at their books. You're right. You have that, especially if you're putting in like, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, which, you have the right to see and make sure that they're capitalized correctly, that they can perform. And you have the right to ask for things that you've created in your vision. And I don't say that to come in, and I say negotiate as an equal partner. I mean, but be confident in negotiating as an equal partner, because you're bringing free equity to the table when you're a DDA. I mean, you're not asking for a cash return. When a typical investor, they want 12% or 15% or whatever. You're saying, we'll put this in because we think it'll benefit the downtown, and we want the benefit. We're going to take our return in other ways, in better amenities, better infrastructure, better climate for business in downtown. But you're still an equity investor, so just kind of keep that in mind. Just sorry, I'll stop my lecture, my editorial for the day, and let you. I want to hear from you, so I'm sorry.
Say something similar to what Abby just said, and possibly one of the biggest things I've taken from listening to you both Monday and Wednesday, and then individually. One of the things that we really need to think about, and that is the order in which we decide to make investments. And I think he said pick some smaller things first. But what I mean by this, and I'm kind of saying what you said, and that is, if we pick some things in the early stages that do not cost a lot of money, but could create a path toward, when we have more money, and a path toward really attracting developers, and a path toward attracting more businesses. These small investments, I think, one of the things I heard you say, could pay really big dividends. So really think through what we do early on that could really leverage, is the word.
Yeah, and that's exactly,
I think that's what you're saying.
yeah, and you just said,
I'm
you
more
said it,
pretty than you are.
you said it really well, and it brought me to lean into the squirrel effect. Like, I have that as a creative. I've had it for 10
I
years.
don't know the scroll, but
It's like squirrel, like it's really easy to get distracted.
Oh.
Not that all of you would have that, but like it's really easy to look at a graph that has a grading system of like the inventory of the town, like in the entire district of DDA, to be like, okay, yeah, that would be, that grading it an A, like that's where we should start, versus a property that's maybe not, as valuable and attractive and would bring community excitement. I think something that brings community excitement would be a higher item on the list, but then that
I
would have
like
to,
the word community.
Yeah,
excitement.
me too.
yeah. And so like, I don't know, like it might be more expensive though. So like one that would create a lot of community excitement would be not attainable. And so kind of a system of that inventory to help us get really
I might
dialed in.
twist it around a little bit. You might find an opportunity that's a D, and for not a lot of dollars, it could become a B.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I think you're thinking about it. That's kind of exactly the kind of discussion I think you're going to want to have. And it'll probably occur over a couple of different meetings, obviously. And the great thing about policies is you can change them. They're not, the difference why it's not included in the plan is because, it's going to guide you, but obviously circumstances change. So you're gonna want to need to course correct. And as you get more sophisticated and kind of understand how the DDA's role in downtown, I think you'll kind of, you'll obviously kind of be updating those. But I think thinking in that way, I think is helpful because it ensures you're prepared to take advantage of opportunities when they pop up. So is there any other thoughts on this? I just was curious if we have a few more minutes left. I wanted to just
We've talked about it before. I just wondered if you had any, like, if we're looking at examples, right, on our own time to go either look at DDAs that may have better materials or things to look at, programs they've done, things that are similar, if you had anywhere to point us in the direction of, hey, this is, similar for whatever reason, this would be a good one to look at and research and see what they've done.
Yeah, I do include actually there's a broader discussion kind of in the plan where I pull a lot of kind of the greatest hits, I think, for DDA
Yep.
in Colorado. And I say, here's a menu of things you should consider. Um, I'm trying to think of one that would be like a good kind of comparison, a comp for kind of size and kind of I know that some of the I-70 communities, I think some people said they'd been to Eagle and Avon to look at some of those. I think those are good examples. They're a little the economics are a little different. That's why it's kind of hard because with some of those I'm trying to think of one that would I mean I know the ones that I've worked on, they're a little the um they're more front range kind of type, but
But even Sarah, what were we looking at? Was it Alt? What was it? What's
was it or
east of Fort Collins? There was one that was like it came up on one thing and I was like,
is
that's a
it
totally
Windsor?
different place. No, it
Oh,
was
Eaton.
Eaton.
Yeah.
Eaton. And I was like, totally different place, very different, but also there are some similarities you drive through, right?
Yeah.
And I remember working in, Greeley and Fort Collins, you go through there all the time. And I was like, oh, there was a couple of things I picked out of there that wouldn't have thought
Yeah.
about.
Well, I'm glad because I'm actually going to be there Thursday presenting on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah. I was like, I think I got gas there once.
um yeah, and Eaton is kind of an interesting community because it's kind of similar in the sense that it's kind of a, a attached to kind of like a big metro, like a Greeley. It's seen more as like the more rural, affordable option. They do actually have a fairly robust arts community there. There's a really big dealer of Southwest art and antiquities and stuff. And so it is similar, and I think their downtown is a little different because they're kind of adjacent to the highway, but like the main 4th Street kind of and really part of that it is getting people to kind of because that even you go through it's like 55 miles or
I was say it's
pretty
fast.
a little different. You need to but then no, I think that's a good example. And I've been working with them to set up their plan. They were a little bit behind because they're doing the election in November, so
Okay, that's what I was thinking about it. Okay.
but they're good. But we have like a library of different like facade programs and things like that we're going to include that you can kind of take a look at.
Perfect.
And see what you think makes the most. And then I think the other thing too is because the town also has programs that are like incentive or within their own economic development that are similar that you could kind of work that I think there'll be some discussion about kind of how you work collaboratively or work together on some of those as well. But I think a lot of it I think is trying to understand kind of what are the unique kind of needs you have of your building stock and fabric, the physical environment in here that is really going to help most. I mean, I had an experience. because a good chunk of my experience is in Loveland, and we had a situation where an old building, lot line to lot line, and we had to do fire sprinkling, because the fire marshal was like, the whole block's going to burn down if you're not careful and stuff. So we went and developed a program to help property owners pay for putting the line in to do because the fire sprinklers are not expensive. It's the digging the trench for to hook it into the water main. But that was unique to Loveland, and I think here I think just my observation is I think the winter snow removal for businesses I think will be a big that stuff and I heard a lot about the ice in the wintertime. And thinking some of the sidewalks, but anyway,
I apologize. I have to get going early, but thank you very much for your
Cool.
time.
thank you.
Real quick, Tiffany, before you go, would you have availability either later in the day, Thursday, or first thing Friday morning for a quick meeting?
This week?
Next week. What I'm thinking is I can send out the draft for anybody who really wants to do the deep dive and read through the whole draft and familiarize yourself, offer any suggestions. We can do that via email. And we need to be careful about the public meeting laws, and so it's going to have to be more of a one-on-one kind of thing for whoever wants to provide feedback or edits. But then if we, it sounds like we should be able to get a polished draft, hopefully from errors, if we get what we need from our legal team in time by Thursday. So looking at either later Thursday or first thing Friday. And if you needed to jump on virtually, that's totally fine, but just an official DDA meeting, public meeting to adopt the plan of development.
Yes, both would work for me.
Okay, great, thanks.
We weren't gonna do that the 13th, or you're talking next week because it has to be in by the 20th, right?
Right, but I'm realizing that I think I would like you guys to actually adopt. I think it makes sense for you guys to adopt kind of the final polished version that we're submitting to the planning commission. And I don't think we're gonna have that until later next week.
Okay.
So looking at a week from tomorrow or a week from Friday.
Okay.
So it would need to be the 19th then.
Yes, the 19th is
Thursday meeting, then
Because Friday's 20th.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Friday.
Yeah, so either
Sweet.
later Thursday or first thing Friday.
Friday would work a lot better for me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Same Friday. Yeah, for early Friday morning would be probably ideal.
okay. It's like 8:30.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
I just have to do childcare.
Oh,
Virtual.
Yeah, if I
I'll
can't get
be-
childcare, I'll get off virtual.
Virtually, okay,
I'll be virtual, obviously, because I'm in Ohio.
okay. Perfect.
Cool.
All right, back to you, Mike. Thank you
Yeah,
all.
No, I was gonna I just
Just I see people getting squirrely, just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
we
no, I
did
just
that.
wanted to just kind of end it with just a thank you on behalf of the Ayers and Carlin and I that I think we really I just personally I really enjoyed my time up here the last couple of days. That you've all been very welcoming, and I appreciate the fact that you've all been very open and direct with your concerns and with your comments. It's really helped us kind of get through this quickly. So I think I hope that the work, and I think it will be the work that we do, reflects kind of the effort that you all put into it to kind of help us understand it. So thank you. My contact's up there. If you have any kind of questions or comments, feel free to just kind of shoot an email or whatever. But our goal is to take what you've given us, kind of spend the next hour or so kind of cleaning it up and kind of wordsmithing some of those suggestions, and then handing it off to Sarah to start that process for review on your problems. So cool. So thanks everyone. We'll be around. So if you want to come and chat real quick before, feel free.
Yeah, but again, thank you, everybody. It's been great that you've brought other people into the process and helped promote this. And again, I know it's not an ideal timeline, so thanks for working with it. But it'll be exciting to have this and to get to move on to the actual planning.
Sure, everybody agrees. Well, thank you. This has been nothing to the next one.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I hope you say that after you read the comment.
I
I said I hope you say that after you read the comment.
I think we will.
And go ahead and follow Fraser, Colorado DDA on Instagram.
I was like, Instagram.
Sorry, I was multitasking.
No worries. Maybe we can do a quick plug on that too, and we meet about the plan.
You need the sign. They have them there, whatever.
All right, so the next time, so we're planning on, we'll see the draft before we meet on Friday, right? So we'll have time to
Yes.
look at it
You're
ourselves.
thinking Friday at 8:30?
If that sounds good to folks, or good enough, I guess I should say. Yeah. So I'll send out like the Word document version draft today or tomorrow probably. And then the polished draft you'll hopefully get on Thursday. So you'll be able to review it before Friday.
So if we have any insights, just reply to you.
Yes.
That's safe,
Yeah,
just to you.
Just to her.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And that way we don't get in trouble with public meetings and having it become a full DDA board discussion.
Perfect.
But yeah, preferably if you hate something, you tell me before Friday. So we're at a
Yeah.
good place on Friday versus needing to recreate the wheel and push everything back. So, all
That's our goal. Yeah. Yeah. Cool, thank you.
right, thanks everybody.
You're guessing 2 hours?
No, I'm hoping